There's many of them, and especially because we put people in places, and you know, one of the things that we do obviously is we put applicants in front of companies, and they make the decision to hire. And one of the hardest things is that I don't make that final decision. I screen them, they're qualified, I try to make the best fit, but I may give 3 to 5 candidates to a company. And a lot of times companies want to hire not what I consider to be the best of the group. They're all qualified, but because of what I know about the company, sometimes I'm asked, you know, who do you think we should hire? Give us your, you know, 1, 2, 3, and I'm willing to do that. I'm willing to stick my neck out there. I've got it cut off a couple of times when maybe I made a wrong choice, but the flip side of that is that they make the decision, and sometimes it's against what I tell them to do. I say, look, I think because and this, no, we're going to do this, and they do it, and then it doesn't work out. And then they come back and they're mad at me. And I mean, I'm kind of like, I told you so. So, I mean, those kinds of things are, you know, are difficult. And sometimes it costs you a lot of money in your pocket because we usually are able to replace. But there are occasions where someone, you know, gets fired, or doesn't work out or whatever, and you know, it comes right out of your paycheck. I'll tell you probably the worst war story that I have, that example, and this is earlier in my career, and I think I've had almost everything happen. I mean, I've had candidates that couldn't get to interviews because they got thrown in jail. I had they didn't show up for an interview, and I called and I found out later that they got picked up for a bad check. You know, those kinds of things. I mean, I've had all kinds of things, but the worst thing hidden in the pocketbook was I had a candidate that didn't report for the first day of work for a job in West Texas, and it was a pretty high-level job, and he just didn't show up the first day of work. And couldn't understand. He was going to relocate his family, couldn't figure out, tried to find out, called his wife, no, he went. Long story short, he got murdered on the way to the job. And they found him buried in the desert about 60 days after, you know, I placed him. Needless to say, I didn't get that commission check on time. But I mean, so I mean, and people do in our business. People are crazy people. I mean, things happen, and they make crazy decisions. At the last minute, they don't show up for a new job. Their boss calls them on Sunday night and doubles their salary or something, and they don't show up, and they don't even call me, you know, and say, you know, hey, this is the problem. So there's all kinds of things, but you learn that you've got to have a lot of balls in the air at every time. You can't put all your eggs in one basket. And the other thing is you can't cry over spilled milk. Boy, you learn that as an entrepreneur. You figure out, let's not do this again. What do? You sit down, you calm yourself down, and you go on. Because it's that, like I said, that fear of, what if I never get another order again? What if I never make another placement again? How am I going to eat? What am I going to do? That type of thing. So and there's going to be many of those, and when you deal with the people factor, you know, it's like Art Linkletter, you know, children say the dangest things, darndest things. People do the darndest things. I mean, when you're dealing with the human factor, you're like, what were you thinking? Or people go to an interview and the company will call me back and tell me how somebody answered a question, and I was like, you know, how could you say that? You shot yourself in the foot and then turned around and shot yourself in the other foot. So, you know, but you have to learn from all those things. And the biggest thing is that, you know what? It's over. What's done is over. It's written in the book. So how do we not do it again? And how do we move forward? Could've, would've, should've. You don't learn anything from that. You learn from, okay, how can we fix it? How can we make sure it doesn't happen again? And how can we move forward? Because if you worry about every placement you didn't make, or every commission you didn't earn, or every stupid thing that one of your people say when they go out, or a stupid thing that you said, I mean, I've done it, and I will give you, I'll give you my biggest horror story that I learned when I was the second year in this business. And it was a setup, but it taught me a big lesson. I had a friend who sent me, a friend of his, she was an office manager. to interview. And this was before I started placing higher level professional people. I placed administrative, secretarial, and people like that. And so he sent me this girl. And she was a disaster, okay? She looked like a mess. She couldn't dress. Her hair looked like she had put her finger in a light socket. I mean, she couldn't talk. She couldn't anything. So my friend called me. And he says, we're going to come by. I said, okay, blah, blah, blah. And he had another friend with him. And the friend sat down. He said, hey, did so-and-so come in to interview with you? Yeah. So what'd you think of her? And I said exactly what I just told you. Well, number one, I said she looked like she put her finger in a light socket. And she couldn't even answer one question I gave her and blah, blah, blah. Now, was I thinking about the other person that was sitting with this gentleman? No, was not thinking. This other guy stood up and said, well, I'm glad to see you think so highly of my wife. Whoa. There's where you learn to I mean, in our business, confidentiality is everything, okay? But my friend set me up to do it, okay? Boy, did I learn. No matter who's in that room, no matter who it is, who you think it is, careful what you say. I was mortified. I mean, that was before I learned let bygones be bygones. I was sick over that for 3 weeks. I was like, oh, I can never show my face again in the community. I can never. So that'll tell you. But that one right there, I'll always remember. And I always remember that finger in the light socket. When I start to think about saying something about someone, or well, like kind of like, you know, maybe best to keep it to yourself. So there's my horror story. So I learned about the confidentiality issue, and, you know, be careful so you know who your audience is.